Welcome back to the Ancient Robot Games podcast. As always, I am Dougal.
I'm Gelf.
And we're joined today by the wonderful Eve Greenwood and Brian Tyrrell, who are RPG designers as well as convention organizers. So, yeah, thanks very much for coming and joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Hello.
So, first of all, RPGs and publications and all sorts of things are both what you do in Edinburgh. As a general question, how did you both get into this insane world of gaming plus writing and designing and all the other bits that go with it?
Well, I'll go first because my answer is very short. I don't really. I think I lean more comic publications, and any sort of tabletop stuff I've done has been very low-key, not at all professionally published in the way that, or even published for a wide reach in the way that Brian has done it. So I go through comics and storytelling, collaborative storytelling, more in like that circle, I suppose. How did you do it, Brian?
I was just gonna add that you're like a very holistic storyteller. You just did a really cool campaign that's all about like searching through ephemera. And
yeah, I guess
really
I suppose
sick.
that
So it's not role playing.
Yeah.
You're also sort of like exploring and playing. That's a lot of your personal work. But you do run like a comics publishing house as well. So like that's insane.
Thank you for.
Oh, can we swear? Sorry.
Yeah, why not? Let's add it in.
It's gonna be a lot of it's my like punctuation of choice.
Your comma.
Yeah.
But yeah, what brought you to the idea even of doing any of that sort of stuff?
I really like telling stories with my partner, and we like exploring different mediums for telling those stories. So we've just released a graphic novel together. We released like a really small visual novel. And one of the first projects we did together was a tabletop setting guide for like an imaginary city styled as a travel guide. So like, oh, when you visit this location, here's what you'll find. And in the back, it had a wee tabletop game from our friend Mayan. And that was really fun to do. And so the Where is Charlie King, which is the most recent one, is a story told to an unusual way, which is a pile of receipts and scraps and cards and letters and all this stuff. So it's just all an excuse to play with my partner, really, just like make up stories with my partner. That's my main drive, is to make something, not necessarily for other people to enjoy, but for me to have made it.
Got you. Awesome. And yourself?
I just liked playing games. It followed me all the way through from uni. I did illustration, and then I would always find excuses on like the free briefs that we got, or we weren't just doing a set piece of work, to like do something a bit role-playsy. I do like character cards, or I do items, or I do little maps and illustrations and vague storytelling like that, which I really enjoyed. And then when I left uni, I kept doing that in like personal projects. And then when I moved to Edinburgh, I was like, I'm going to really go do it. I'm going to do it, guys. I'm going to do it. And I started actually publishing like role-playing zines, full adventure paths for like D&D 5e, which I think is where a lot of people get their first start making proper full project content. And from there, I went into sort of making my own games. I started with like bolt-on systems to help with other games, to play with D&D and Pathfinder and other systems like that. And then I made my own games. I made Scurry, and then I kind of collaborated with like other writers, like Anna Blackwell. We did Apothecaria. Yeah, so mostly it's just been like, I love games. I make games. I do things that are related to games. I publish other people's games now, Border Riding and One Breath Left. And yeah,
where do you publish those through?
Oh, so I run Stout Stoat Press, which is...
Oh, thank goodness you mentioned it. And all of us were at Stout Stoat Press. Stoat Press, yeah.
Where I make great games. It's a little guy going, that's the logo, and I feel like that's me. Oh no, I've got a better tagline, sorry. It's Stout Stoat, because stoats, they take down prey 5 times their size, and I take on projects 5 times too big.
It's been really cool as well to see your development as like a games designer and publisher, because your ethos has always been there, even from when it was Dungeons on a Dime. It was like the Wii Adventures. It's really clear to see your voice even from those early projects, and then slowly developing outside of other people's systems and building your own systems. You've been very dedicated to what the stories you wanted to tell that whole time.
Yeah.
You've developed your voice, and you've developed the way that you're telling these stories, but it's never been far off it.
Oh, well, thanks. That's really sweet. I love short games. I don't have a very huge stamina for like social activities. So I've always liked games that are like 1, 2, 3 hours long. And that's the kind of games that I like to curate, that I like to publish, that I like to kind of art direct for. Honestly, I just love the whole creative process. And so running a publishing house has been very self-indulgent, where I get to be a bit of a control freak and be like, I'm going to do the design. I'm going to do the typography. I'm going to write it. I'm going to do the art direction. I'm going to like do the illustration myself. I'm going to do the print production. It's It's a lot of fun.
I think it's really interesting because RPGs in general are such a kind of social experience, well, for a lot of people outside of solo RPGs, obviously, but it is very seemingly extrovert, but the amount of people I know who design and play tabletop RPGs are almost completely introverted with the amount of social battery they have and time they want to spend. I just find that a really interesting thing, that is what drives this whole thing, is this desire to tell a story seems to be less on the showing off side possibly of a personality and more of a interest in the kind of character development and sort of insular nature of people and characters and settings and everything else that's involved with it. Incredibly amazing, both of the work that you guys have been doing. And to mention, you have also created a convention over the past few years, which is Tags Fest, which is incredible to have based here in Edinburgh. How did you get started with the idea of, hey, I make these things, this is really cool, maybe we'll put a huge amount of work into it and organize a massive festival for a whole bunch of people?
I mean, Brian and I have been friends before we started doing tags, obviously. We were both running our own publishing houses. So I was doing Quindire Press for comics, Brian doing Stout Stoat for tabletop. And we were both finding that there wasn't really a venue in Scotland through which we could sell our small press work anymore. A lot of the conventions that we used to sell at either closed down because of COVID or other financial problems, or moved in a direction that wasn't really focused on independent creators selling their self-published work. So we're both crazy and we were like, what if we just did that? And then we just did that.
It was an insane game of chicken where I don't know who or which one of us said it first. We were like, I want to run a convention. We should do this. And then the other one was like, yeah. And then we kept like...
We're just like looking at each other.
A name. And then we were looking like, well, how much is a venue? A venue can't cost that much. And we started looking at venues and started like phoning venues up and they kind of like really like hunting down. And like, then we got like the fruit market through like other connections that I had with previous events that I'd also helped with the Zine Fest. And then we realized we'd opened like table applications and we were thinking, oh God, we were doing it.
Yeah, we just accidentally fell into doing it. And we wanted to make sure that it was an event that would service both of our communities. So Tags Fest stands for Tabletop and Graphic Storytelling. So that's comics, that's zines, that's tabletop games, that's board games, that's any sort of visual and collaborative storytelling is what we wanted to focus on. So yeah, the third one is this year, and it's going to be on the 25th and 26th of October, 2 days at Fruit Market Gallery in Edinburgh. And it's free to go to, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be so good. We're going to have a board game zone from Ancient Robot Games. I don't know, have you heard of them before?
Only negative stuff.
Yeah, we're trying to get out of that contract.
Yeah, understandable.
Yeah, an amazing board game zone run by Ancient Robot Games, a huge creator marketplace up the stair. It's going to be so good. We're going to hopefully have
some
events. Hopefully some talks going on. Yeah, so we I think the same way that we both got into publishing, we saw a space that wasn't being filled that we wanted to be filled. So we filled it.
Well, I think something else just to add as to like the motivation for this is that a lot of the events that are remaining in Scotland are extremely pricey for the amount of money that is flowing in the small press sector. And we wanted to do our best to give back to the community that supported us and to the people who've like been buying from us, for years, by creating a space where they could still gather, where like the entry is free. It's not like 20 or 30 pounds a ticket to get in, and that where the table prices are, low cost and reasonable. And we're not trying to wring a lot of money out of a small space. We're just trying to like help as many people as we can. And that's what we've been trying.
Yeah, especially because a lot of the people who are creating this work aren't making a lot of money from it. So if you're forking out a huge amount of cash to table at an event where you might not make that back, that might not be something that's worth it to you. That might be, something you want to pass over. So trying to create space for smaller creators and creators who are just getting started and marginalized creators, trying to get a space for them to also show off their work.
Yeah, we do I'm really happy with this. We do like transparent reporting where we anonymously survey all of the exhibitors and like, how did the show go for you? Did you feel safe? Did you have a good time? Was the space welcoming? Like, what were your sales like? And that way people can tell us, we're doing really well. We're really enjoying this. We like to these things could be improved. And so now that we've got our third year coming, I think it's going to be a really strong show.
What do you think happened to the you said you're filling a gap that hasn't been around for a while, especially in Scotland. I know that you were saying a lot of the previous events were kind of gobbled up by COVID or other kind of issues. Where has that kind of interest gone? Do you think that independent artists have had to just deal with larger events, or do you think that the niche events are just not going to be as common anymore?
I don't know, because I know from our numbers, from our reporting, there are people who want these events, like attendees. It's not just the tablers. People, buyers, shoppers, readers, players want these events just as much as the creators do. But I think there's not much motivation for event organizers to gear them towards small press, because more mainstream events will bring in more money. Brian and I run tags currently as volunteers. This year, we're hoping to pay ourselves a little bit, but it's still not enough to cover our time and, our resources we put into this. All of our signage from last year, Brian printed himself. We used volunteers to help steward the event. Brian and I, last 2 years, took home no money from the event other than what we made when we were selling.
In fact, for the first event, we actually paid out of pocket to help support and pay for materials and things like that. We were like, oh, well, we get to sell at the event, so we'll recoup some costs.
Yeah.
But we paid in to make it happen.
So I think we are in a super lucky position where we're able and willing also to do that for our communities. I just don't think that's something that a lot of people can or want to do in order to create these spaces. I think there's a lot of community support that is needed that not everyone can provide.
I think what happened over COVID is that there are some real champions in our community who've been doing the unspoken, silent, free volunteer labor for decades. And we lost some of those champions. A lot of those also then had, the recessions coming in, people are losing jobs. It's a hard time for everyone. So people are pulling back and focusing on just staying afloat right now. And that means that they're not around to run the smaller events that many other people relied on. I think there is a huge desire for small events, but when you look at, say, larger scale, like you look at your MCM and your UK Games Expo, they're a professional operation for publishers who have staff of 10, 20 people who are really dedicated and going in. And it's not necessarily their role in the commercial space to be looking out for every single tiny small press zine seller, but we do still need these small events. And so it's, people like me and Eve who are kind of putting on a good event and, trying our best.
And when we say that Brian and I are running publishers, I want to clarify, we run micro publishers. The publishers is both of us in our pants. We're just at our desk answering emails. There's not huge teams behind us.
Micro for now.
Micro,
10 years time, you'll have taken over everyone else, bought them all out.
See, genuinely.
Get some trousers, yeah.
Well, yeah,
You'll get
finally we can avoid some trousers.
It's very uncomfortable sitting here in the studio, nobody wearing trousers.
It's warm, breezy.
This is how you would always want it, the podcast.
My dream.
Yeah,
I think people think that businesses scale because of capitalism, but I've been doing Dungeons on a Dime and then Stout Stoat for a combination of maybe 7 years now. It's still just me. I pay my artists and all the freelancers I work with, my editors. I do everything I can to pay everyone as fairly as possible, but I still don't have enough money to pay myself even a regular amount of money. I could not hire someone else because I could not promise that stability of a salary, or even start to figure out the legal ramifications of having an employee and the insurance and all of the stuff that's going on with that. I don't think I will ever have an employee.
Yeah, I was really interested when you say that, particularly about the convention side of stuff and how not strapped for cash these things are, but how it's driven by the passion of the thing. I feel like that is the same within board game design, the same within all design stuff, particularly when you start, when you have nothing and you end up having to pay a lot simply to get the smallest amount out there. You're not going to ever recoup that. It's never going to come back. It is a stepping stone and kind of where you have to prove yourself, I guess, or to yourself that you really, really want to create something and want to show something out into the world. And I think the convention is simply a space beyond that. It's something which you want to create something, you want to share something with the world, but you want other people to gather into that too. And that kind of passionate sacrifice is inbuilt a lot within the gaming community because it's not easy to get any of these things up and running at all. It requires an awful lot of time, energy, and unfortunately money as well.
I mean, from a relatively new designer perspective, also focusing on board games, frankly, the art challenge for both comics and RPGs actively makes me anxious. I mean, you have a lot of art and you have that you have to deal with, and that's a lot of time for for artists, and it's not like a human working on one kind of art is fundamentally a different level of artist than someone else. Like there's a lot of stuff that you guys need to do for a small press. Like how, I mean, maybe shifting away, just pausing from the expo talk for a second, but I'm curious, Eve, about the difference between developing indie comics versus RPGs. I know you don't do a lot of it, but from a perspective of holistic storytelling, I know that you're interested in that, but comics are a very long-term story development process, and RPGs are seeding the tools that other people can use to bring those stories to life. So there's a lot of crossover in terms of fans, but do you have insight in terms of the differences and how you approach thinking about that, or how people might want to approach thinking about them
in terms of creating artwork for one or the other?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not really sure. A lot of the artists that I work with are solo creators, so they are the writer and the artist, and I myself am also writer artist. And yeah, comics take a long time. I've been working on my series for 10 years. 4 more to go. And it's kind of, I mean, linking back to something you were saying, Dougal, it's very frustrating because a lot of these creatives want to create. They want to tell a story. They want to make art. They want to share their stuff. And it's not about the money necessarily. It's nice to make money, but that's not what drives a lot of creators. But you need the money and you need to be able to sustain yourself. So I think tabletop and comics have a lot of overlap in terms of a project that takes so much time to develop, gives so little in return financially, because like margins on board games, I'm talking like that's so much development for very, very thin margins. It's a frustrating industry to be in. It's very, very irritating to see that these art forms are so looked down on, because like we're like, oh, games or what, D&D or whatever, or like, oh, comics, that's like what, the Beano. It's like, no, yes, sure,
there's asterisks.
Yeah, like there's real art and real stories being told through these mediums, and I think they should be recognized for the art that they are. In terms of developing a comic from start to finish, that would be a whole complete different podcast, I think. But my work as an editor, I think, is probably a little similar, a little different to Brian's in terms of art direction, because I'm looking over the shoulder of the artist and I'm pointing out edits and I'm making suggestions how to strengthen that story. Whereas I think an art director for a TTRPG is much more like, here's what you will do.
Yeah.
Now do it.
You have to sort of, the role of the art director is to hold the vision of the project across all of the artwork and to be thinking of all of the pieces of artwork in context of each other. If you're working with more than one artist, they may not be talking, and they most likely won't be talking to each other or seeing each other's drafts or pulling from the same pool of inspirations. Even if you give them resources, a shared bank to all be looking at, they're going to be taking their own inferences from this. And so the role of the art director is to say, hey, I love that you've drawn a character with a straw hat here, but every other artist in this book has drawn a straw hat and it looks like it's a thing now. Could you just take that out? And thinking about like greater context, or being like, you might not think this scene's really important, but actually this is like pivotal. This is going to be so insane when we see this in the book. Let's really just go crazy here. Let's really amp this up. And it's a lot more like directing an entire cast of actors to put something together in tandem with, if you're working as art director and graphic designer, then you have more control over like where the art goes and why it's going there. If you're working with a graphic designer, then you're making sure that you're communicating about like where the important pages in the book are, where you have these big moments to have artwork, where the spot's going, what they're meant to communicating, what's going on with the text. It's a lot more like it's moving pieces around a board. It's like a worker placement game more than it is about just sort of like coaching and supporting and helping an individual person move through the process of telling a really complex and beautiful story.
And is it driven mainly by that design and layout and everything side of the vision that the writer and designer have come into it with? Or do you find that sometimes these art decisions are driven by the mechanics of any games that are either being built by the person? Do you find that there's a prompt point that starts these things? Or is it something that kind of coalesces and the game itself might change dependent on the art decisions that are made with it?
Yes. Oh, like
Good. Easy done. No, we'll move on.
It's a great. It's always a conversation back and forth. There's been moments. I'm working on this big encyclopedia, role-playing encyclopedia about the Picts. So in theory, once you've read it, you'll know about the Picts, and you'll be able to play in like Dungeons and Dragons, but you're all Picts. And there have been moments when I've been working with artists where I've put together a scene that's got a complex emotional beat to it. It's in tandem with the writing and the research that we've got. And then the artist has come back with something very different to what I expected. And that's not bad. It's just a completely different reading of the situation. They've taken the information, the briefing I've put together, they felt those emotions, and they've come back with a really complicated response. And then I've been like, oh, I got to make the text better. We got to like, oh, this is really cool. And you get this sort of like resonation where like everything's just kind of getting cooler and better as you work together. And that's where a lot of joy on like a comprehensive project where you have one person doing a lot of different roles, like art direction, graphic design, writing, like I'm doing, that can be really good. Sometimes your art director is there to kind of really be steering people into different directions. There's another moment where I was working with an artist who was just stylistically going for something that was more like painterly and smooth and perfect. And I had to be like, got to rough it down. This needs to look really human. This needs to feel like you need to feel every single brush stroke in a way that is identifiable characteristically. And not that what you're doing is bad or wrong, but in context of everything else that's going on, we need a cohesive, strong message throughout the entire book. And that's the art director's job too.
Shifting back to kind of indie creators or indie presses, indie designers, studios, and how they interact with expos or with events. You not only run tags, but you also exhibit a lot. Mm-hmm. And so knowing that there aren't as many, niche or focused smaller events out there for people to go to, how do you optimize the experience of exhibiting at other places? And do you have any kind of suggestions about what people should think about?
So I had a thought that I had like pinned and wanted to bring back. What we found with tags that has been really cool is that we have a sort of like a table policy. When exhibitors come, they have to have, I think it's like 50 or 75% of the table has to be dedicated to like a sequential project, like a comic or zines or tabletop games. They can have some merchandise with them, but it's not like the majority of their table.
So a lot of people at events will be selling like prints, stickers, keychains, stuff that is not necessarily their main product, which might be a book or a game.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's not the thing they spend the majority of their time lovingly working on. It's like, oh, it's like a cool piece of fan art. Like this is something fun and it uses my skills, but I need this to pay my bills.
Yeah.
But the really exciting piece of feedback we've had from exhibitors is they say that they brought their merch and they had that there, but at tags where the focus is on books and making sure that is curated and that's enforced, they found they sold more books, that people were coming in and they would see the merch and they would just go and buy a more expensive book, and they had bigger sales, and that was the majority of their income. At other events, you are competing. I say competing, it's a marketplace, and so there's lots of different things on offer. A lot of the markets in Scotland right now are focused on, they're like popular culture, they're like movie posters and statues and keychains, and they have a lot of small dinky products that are like £2 to £5, £5 to £10. And when you've got a game there that's £25, you have to pitch really hard and know how to sell yourself really keenly to say, I'm worth 5 keychains,
I'd say you're worth at least 30 keychains. Like,
very kind of.
I'm.
I think, having a event where it is being marketed to promote you as a creator is really important. So one of my favorite events as a comic publisher is Thought Bubble, which is down in Harrogate in England.
I also love Thought Bubble.
Thought Bubble is fantastic. It is like the biggest independent comic event in the UK. Obviously MCM is bigger, but I'm talking indie comics, small press. And that is marketed very heavily as small press, independent creators. And you get hundreds and hundreds of people. So there's air quotes competition there. But because the attendees know what they're coming for, they know they're coming here for small press stuff, you will sell your small press stuff. So I think that's really important for a creator, is to look at who is the event targeted at when it's looking at its audience. Who is it trying to get ticket sales from? Who is it? What kind of stuff is it promoting as taking place at the event? Like table price obviously will come into it, but is the event focused on bringing people through the door just to sell tickets, or is it focused on bringing people through the door to buy your thing?
Yeah, you don't want competition, you want celebration.
Yeah.
Do you ever find, though, that seeking out a space where it isn't actually designed to sell your thing, however, there might be a decent crossover so that you stand out more?
Sometimes, so an example would be, I've never done it, but I know that there are comic artists who sell at Tabletop Scotland, and they do well because there's good people like, oh, there's no comics here, I'll buy comics. And Brian, I think, has found the same selling tabletop games at Thought Bubble, because there's not many tabletop games there. And I know that some comic creators have found success selling at like craft fairs and, little book markets and that kind of thing. There is a risk if it's wildly off base with what you're selling. Like if you rock up to, I want to say, like a handmade craft fair and you're selling board games, I think you're going to be a bit hard pressed to make some decent sales to make that really worthwhile. But you're absolutely right, where it's not, the people who want to buy your stuff are not always aware of the event where they can buy that stuff.
Yeah.
So you'll get people who are just like, oh my God, I love comics. I would love to read a small press comic. I'd love to read an independently made TTRPG. No idea where to get it, so I won't look, so I won't go. So it's a risk.
I think it's about knowing the audience of the show and that they're going to be excited in what you might be bringing, or that you could show them that they could be excited. Like, I know some of the comic authors who go to Tabletop Scotland, and their comics fit the audience and age range of the people going to that convention. Like, they're not just rocking up and saying, well, I'm the only comics author, you just have to buy my stuff. Like, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Similarly, when I go to Thought Bubble, I might not be a graphic novel, a comic, but I mean, half of the illustrators that I work with are tabling next to me. All of the aesthetics, the storytelling, the approach that I take, all of that resonates with what Thought Bubble is about. And that's why I sell really well when I go there.
And do you change up from a game designer perspective, I guess, who is selling their stuff at a convention, be it a small scale indie one or something huge like UK Games Expo, do you tailor your actual stand to sell stuff at as a different thing dependent on the event that you're doing? Is there something that you push to the fore, or other things that you maybe restrict selling within these conventions based upon what that market is?
So Eve might have a different response to me, but I just pick and choose my conventions very carefully. I don't have enough variety of stock. I have like 5 games in print right now, if that. And so if I don't think that everything I can bring is going to do well at a convention, I'm just not going to go. And that means that I only go to maybe like 3 or 4 events a year. But I really like tailor and pick the ones. I also go maybe every other year. Carved in Stone's going to be coming out. Well, it's going to print in July. And so I'm not going to be having it in time for UK Games Expo. But that's my next big, huge project. So I'm probably going to sign up for UK Games Expo for 26 because I have something big and fancy to show off. Otherwise, I know that a lot of the people have already seen my stuff, bought my games, got it from wholesale somewhere else. So it's not a huge deal for me to go and spend $2-3 grand to get to UK Games Expo, get the expensive hotel, buy the really, really nasty pizza, get past the Viking reenactors at the front of the squad. I don't have to do all of that because I don't have a big flashy thing to really make value of a trip like that. So yeah, I just tailor the shows that I go to. But I mean, Eve's got what?
Could you repeat the question? Because I lost track of it.
No.
No. He doesn't remember that.
No, just about whether you tailor your stand itself based upon the event that you're at.
Yes and no. Sometimes if I can be bothered to lug my entire display, or if it's, really far and I'm taking the train, I'll bring less stuff. So not really. I do have a wide range of stock. I've got, I think, between 13 and 15 books. So that's a lot to bring, and they're all different sizes. There's some bigger hardback, some small. So I'll tailor quantities that I'm bringing, but not so much the display. I've finally figured out a really nice, effective display. It has all the information I need. The books are all laid out very clearly and nicely. That's it. I'm not thinking about it any further than that.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
Do you find that a lot of people discover your comics through events? Is it mostly online? How do engaging with events factor into your overall awareness approach?
I think events are super important for especially local awareness, but also not everyone is online. It's really easy to get bogged down in thinking about okay, I've got to do my SEO, I've got to do Instagram ads, I've got to do all this stuff, got newsletters. Your most passionate readers might be offline and not even have a Facebook account.
Yeah.
So it's really important to do that local and in-person marketing. So a lot of my audience comes through Kickstarter. People who've never heard of me, I get a huge percentage of first-time backers or first-time to me backers every new Kickstarter campaign that I run, because people just stumble across it or think, oh, I'll give this a go. But in-person events, especially for things like tags, which is free. So people can just wander in off the street and be like, what is this? And I can pitch it to them. And often I will get a lot of very new interested readers that way. And it's just about, meeting them where they're at, where if they're like, oh, what is this, comics? And I can be like, yeah, what's your favorite genre? What's a book you read recently or a movie you read recently that you enjoyed? Oh, you like that? This might be up your alley. So I get a lot of sales through trying to understand what that person might enjoy rather than just being like, yeah, it's a comic, like figure it out, trying to introduce people to it through the lens of something they already enjoy.
And that's the same within the games, do you find, Brian?
Yeah. I don't know why my mind blanked now. I was like, wow, yeah, that's what makes sense. Yeah. No, it's word of mouth. Honestly, is like probably the biggest way that I get new people playing my games. I feel like with games, you have a different experience to comics, because with comics, you read it, you're like, wow, this is really good, and you lend it to a friend. But
you can also just pick up a comic and read it, whereas a game, you have to like plan someone to do it.
But also, you get one person who's enthusiastic in your game, and then they run it for 5 other friends, and they get to spend 3 hours indoctrinating them into loving your thing, hopefully. If you've done your job right, you've made a game that's enjoyable.
Which is easy.
Yeah. Everyone can do it.
Super easy.
Yeah, easy. Yeah.
Speaking of games that are super easy and very enjoyable, possibly is the question. It was a game that we wanted to talk about today, which is something that I know you have played, Eve, which is a game, tabletop RPG called Dialect.
Yes.
I think it has the subtitle of How a Language Dies.
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit about the game and your experience playing it?
Yes, so Dialect is by Thorny Games, and I absolutely love this company. All of their games are about language and how communication defines us and our relationships as people. Fantastic game. So Dialect is about the language of a community, how it evolves and changes over time, and how the community changes and responds to an outside them versus the inner us. So each player plays a character who is one of these like different archetypes, and you go through this whole story. It's all card based. So, you pull over the cards, you get prompts, you discuss with the other players how words come into the language or how they leave the language. It's so much fun, and that's like a really terrible description, but I love languages and I love this game so much. It's very, very fun and a really great. I think a lot of people can see games that have card prompts or just prompts that you go through as potentially quite like railroady, like, oh, I know what's going to happen because this, that, and the other. But the way that Thorny Games writes their games is very open-ended, and it allows for a lot of imagination and creativity from the players. So Brian and I actually just played another game from that company called Xenolanguage last week.
It was insane.
It's so good. That one is about communicating with aliens, using like a Ouija board to communicate and try to interpret their language. And it's just so good. I love their games so much. And that's another one where it says it's about language. It's, my friend asked before we started playing, I don't know anything about linguistics. Can I play this? And I was like, yes. It's not about language. It's about using language to define relationships and define how we communicate with each other. So both Dialect and Xenolanguage, I think, do that really, really well.
That's awesome. I again have seen Xenolanguage and was like, wow, this looks amazing, because there's lots of nice little pieces and things like that in that.
Very satisfying. Or like the little planquette or whatever it's called, planchette, that you move around the board is just so smooth. They did such a good job with it.
Yeah, Dialect recently came into the shop and it is beautiful. It's like in a woven bag and comes with cards, and the book is absolutely gorgeous. Super exciting.
We talked about artwork and like how art like is related to games and the process of art direction, all that. It is a beautiful game, but it's also a very well written game as well. I mean, I have my experience of Xenolanguage. I'm just assuming that Dialect is as good because the company is just insanely good. But when we played Xenolanguage, it was just a single deck of cards, of event cards. It was just reading out one by one and doing a little scene. But it felt like the story we got by the end of it was so customized to our specific experience. It felt like we had somehow, it was pre-written and we just discovered it, as opposed to it being like railroady or like, and then Jim went up the hill and he saw an alien. It was so unique, bespoke. That's the lovely word.
Yeah, the prompts on each card are like, you approach the craft, describe your approach. And you just go around the circle. Each person takes one of those prompts. So maybe it's my turn to describe. Sorry, we're talking about Xenolanguage now, not Dialect. But it's a similar gameplay. Someone describes the craft, someone does the next bit. It's very collaborative in that way. So yeah, even though, like you say, it feels like, oh, okay, you go up to the spaceship. Now Like, it's going to be the same every game. The characters and the situation and the language, the words that you interpret, they're all different, going to be every different. It's such a good game. I'm going to
have to play that, right? The big question is, did Jim go up a hill and meet an alien?
Well, you're going to have to play that.
It's really interesting talking about RPGs. Most of the time on the podcast, we've been talking about board games in general over TTRPGs. But it's really interesting the difference between talking about board games and talking about RPGs. Board games often come when you describe a game, you describe mechanics first and then feelings second. And I always find talking about RPGs, it's always feelings first. It's the atmosphere, it's the kind of joy of the game, it's the how things work, and then mechanics come up a little bit later, if at all, when you're describing a tabletop RPG to someone. It's describing the setting and the characters and everything else that is pushed to the forefront of everything. And then you're like, oh, and you roll your thing and it's a D20 roll under system or something like that comes through it. Whereas board games fit on the other side of things generally. And I just think that's really interesting because it is a collaborative storytelling experience more often with a less competitive bent when it comes to RPGs. There is still some competition in there. A lot of people do want to one-up each other with how their characters are doing and what they're doing with those characters. But it's never at the expense of someone else. It's always just to promote themselves in a really interesting way, depending on the group that they're with. Do you find yourself looking at board games or anything else from a more atmospheric and feeling-based focus as TTRPG specialists?
I mean, yeah, I feel I've been working on historical projects and picture stuff for like 5 years now. And when this encyclopedia is done, I want to work with other forms of storytelling. I want to do a comic, I want to do a visual novel, I want to do a board game, I want to do all sorts of different ways of experiencing forms of culture because they just curate a different experience. A board game is you do these actions, you get this experience, and you have this like this simulated clash, and it's really exciting. With role-playing games, there's more agency, but also that can be a little like stifling or scary. And so they have different strengths to them, and I think every form of storytelling is valid and cool.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much for coming to join us today. It's been amazing to talk to you both. One more time, Tags is coming.
Tags is going to be the 25th and 26th of October. That is the last weekend in October.
Yes.
At Free Market in Edinburgh. That's right outside Waverley Station. Free to attend, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. both days.
Yes. Really looking forward to it. Thank you both for coming and joining again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Ancient Robot Games podcast. As always, I have been Dougal.
And I am Gelb.
And this has been recorded and edited by Ryan Scott. If you liked this, or didn't...
Even if you didn't,
please let us know in the comments or via email or Pigeon, if you got Pigeon.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like us, drop us a line. And if you don't, do this really, really cool thing where you press follow or like. It actually works against us. So we'll still get the message.
Thank you very much for coming and listening with us. And we'll hear you next time.